Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to some more Warhammer 40k lore, where today we are going to have a look at my very first favorite chapter, before I even knew what chapters were, as all I had was a single colored page of Space Marine chapters, 100 of them. And the most striking of all, and thus my favorite many, many decades ago, were the Doom Eagles. Because, I mean, look at them. They're awesome, if slightly ostentatious. And even though many years have passed and their lore has evolved quite a bit, they're still pretty damn awesome, as they hold the high honor of being the second most grimdark chapter in the 41st millennium, only being out-grimmed and out-darkened by the Exorcist's chapter. Because let's face it, they're in a league of their own. Honestly, I suspect the two chapters might get along. Or not at all, really. Because, well, see, here's the thing. The Exorcists do unbelievably horrifying things out of a sense of hope that there is still some way to fight back and resist, an effective countermeasure against the great enemy. Meanwhile, the Doom Eagles, their core foundational philosophy is that they're all dead. And so they might as well throw themselves at the foe with absolute ferocious abandon. Both because, if they're already dead, it frankly doesn't matter if it's today or tomorrow, but also because if they will deliberately take upon themselves the harshest duties and the worst punishments, they may yet be able to shield somebody else from the same, or worse still. It's a strange form of fatalistic altruism, formed before even the chapter itself, in the minds of its founding chapter master, Tullian Aquila, of the 24th chapter of the Ultramarines Legion, and Sergeant at Calth. Fair enough. That battle could breed a good deal of cynicism into even the most optimistic of minds. Tullian and the 24th chapter in its entirety had the great misfortune of finding itself directly beneath the orbital weapon batteries at the moment that the word bearers turned on their 13th Legion cousins. After a lengthy and devastating orbital bombardment, the only ones left of the 24th were Tullian and two other brothers, both of whom fell in the fighting thereafter. The death of these brothers, who had already survived the impossible, the heavens themselves raining annihilatory fire down upon them, broke or awoken something, depending upon your point of view, in Tullian's mind. The realization that no matter what, they were all going to die. The only constant in the universe is that everything ends. Lives, legacies, honor, reputation, achievements. Even the Imperium itself, presumably, is bound to crumble away eventually. This meant that the pursuit of things like honor or glory were all ultimately pointless. And as they were ultimately pointless, these things held no value in and of themselves. The only thing that held any purpose anymore was to rage against the universal constant of the end. To fight against that which could not be fought. To steal any victory, no matter how small, away from death itself. To spare, therefore, the greatest quantity of the Imperium's populace from the terrors and horrors of the realization that the Doom Eagles now build their entire worldview upon. Every death prevented, every modicum of suffering forestalled, every imperial citizen or world saved, is the Doom Eagles spitting in the face of death, denying the inevitable even as they realize that it is, in fact, inevitable. This not only makes the Doom Eagles incredibly brave, which goes well with the fact that they are enormously fond of jump pack assaults, a delivery method where, by and large, there is only one way in and out. But it also means that in a weird, twisted kind of way, they're one of the more caring Astartes chapters. Now, you well know, of course, that I view that as an inexcusable weakness amongst the God Emperor's Astartes, like the weakest of all of Big E's sons, Vulcan's failures, the Salamanders, who would happily sacrifice the life of a space marine, an incredibly potent and rare resource in an empire forever tethering upon the brink of annihilation, to save a bunch of smelly peasants. Listen, I know they mean well, but that's a terrible trade, no matter how you put it. No, much better the likes of the Marine Malevolent, who will happily wipe out 10,000 orcs, along with the 10,000 civilians whose refugee camps they're currently pillaging via massed artillery bombardment, than risk their own, significantly more valuable lives. But in the case of the Doom Eagles, there's a certain poetic justification in it. See, the Sons of Vulcan do this because it's the right thing to do, because they're all just so caring. In the 41st millennium. Faggots. The Doom Eagles do so specifically because this is the way they know to take from death, to inflict small yet stinging defeats upon this inexorable, inevitable foe. There is strength in that, purpose, rather than just empty moralizing. And there is beauty in this as well, the recognition of death. They have a wonderful memorial, for example, in their fortress monastery. There is an area known as the Hall of the Fallen, where enormous obsidian slabs are erected with the names of the fallen etched into them in silver lettering. Each one of the names then also has a small item held in an obsidian bauble nearby. A simple thing. It can be anything: a bolter shell, a cloth, a chain, a weapon piece, anything that has once belonged to the dead, or been particularly favored by him, or perhaps even something simply retrieved from his body after his demise. These are all signifiers of a triumph against death, of a life lived in opposition to it, and of the achievements that that individual battle brother had in life. A reminder that whilst death is inevitable, there can still be triumphs over it. A shrine both to life and death. Much like another fantastical little piece of their fortress monastery, their reclusium. Now, many chapters operate basically museums to their own achievements, or simply halls where they can venerate their fallen and ancestors and legacies, or display particular pieces of ornaments, weaponry, or indeed even entire vehicles or skeletons on occasion, to demonstrate their prowess. Some indeed like taking trophies for this very purpose. The Doom Eagles are somewhat similar in this regard, but their trophies differ in that they are not celebrations necessarily of their achievements, but rather of the severity of the threat faced. Their reclusium contains countless displays taken from areas where great tragedies occurred and vast loss of life, death made manifest. They are even supposed to have one of Sanguinius's feathers. I imagine there are a fair few blood angels that might be a little bit upset about that, or a broken tile from the Imperial Palace. These are, of course, items of significant spiritual and symbolic value that remind the chapter, yet again, of the horrors that they fight against and to prevent. I do not believe that this exists so much as a veneration of death, and I see this repeated quite often, by the way, that the Doom Eagles simply worship death or venerate it. I do not believe that is entirely the case, for if they did, there would be no purpose in resisting. It is very much so the victory over death, rather than the surrender to it, that lies at the heart of the Doom Eagles, and at the heart of the Reclusium as well. No one can be forgiven for misunderstanding that particular part, considering how morose the chapter is overall. They're hardly the celebratory kind, and I'm sure they themselves would not put forward that particular interpretation. Yet, nevertheless, that is what the chapter is, a triumph over death. This can also be seen in their recruitment methods. So, the Doom Eagles is one of those chapters that frankly should have been wiped out a very long time ago, through the simple fact that they would be entirely incapable of ever replacing their own losses. So, the Doom Eagles are located on the world of Gathis II. This is a planet that was once struck by some vast stellar object, inflicting enormous damage to the planet, shattering it, seeing vast mountain spires rise from a broken surface, and will, according to the Doom Eagles themselves, eventually see the end of the world in its entirety. Its core growing too heavy, too dull to continue the planet's spinning. And once the planet stops turning, catastrophic consequences follow. Upon this doomed world, every year they gather up all of the children, at least those that have the ability to be transported anyways, as the world is rather primitive, where the populace seem to use gliders, very, very crude and purely air-driven gliding machines, with very little, if any, in the form of engines, to travel between the various spires. Anyways, once a year, all 13-year-old male children are taken to central gathering points, where a chapter librarian goes through their ranks, investigating their number, choosing only those who have, decided that their lives really aren't worth living, who have no greater goal or ambition, who view even their continued existence as, in essence, hopeless. Once selected by the librarian, the young aspirant, sort of anyways, is taken away by the chapter's serfs and is put into an artificial coma, whereupon he is transported to one of the mountains near their fortress monastery of the Eyrie. They are then given a mental briefing by the librarian, who never shows himself to the young aspirant. Instead, he speaks directly into his mind, informing him of the history of the planet, how Gathis II will inevitably die at some point, that all things will inevitably die at some point. And the point is stressed that the young aspirant will also die. He is then informed that the cave in which he currently resides will soon fill with boiling water seeping up from volcanic vents underneath his feet. He will either drown or be burned to death if he stays in that same chamber. There is only a single exit, further out up into the cave systems. If the aspirant simply chooses to stay, he dies. If he climbs, he will emerge into an area covered by viciously sharp and very long, nasty thorns and slippery lichen on the ground, ensuring that every misstep will lead to a painful reminder of the jagged thorns all around him. These will pluck at his clothing, tear his flesh, prick open his skin, and leave him torn and bloody if he even indeed desires to go through this torturous passage, or if he yet again simply surrenders to the boiling waters, ever seeping up behind him. If the aspirant passes through this test, torn and bloodied, he emerges into another underground chamber, but he needs to leap across a vast chasm and grab onto a jagged rock face ahead of him, which he must then climb. Still, the boiling water follows, hissing and spitting and biting at his heels. So it goes throughout cave after cave after cave, with more and more soul-level murder inventions intended to test whether or not the aspirant has given up on life, but still not the desire to push forward, to triumph over death even as he accepts that death is inevitable. Should he somehow, and I remind you here, a 13-year-old boy, survive these countless trials, he will emerge out on an open shelf at the side of the mountain. Boiling water still coming for him, and a little bit of lava now as well, just to add some extra spice to the survival horror. Upon this little outcropping, there will be several gliders. Now, any 13-year-old boy raised in an environment like this would no doubt be fairly familiar with gliders and will probably have used them in the past. This will probably seem if anything, a kind of nice thing, really. A final little challenge. Grab one of the gliders and fly over to the Eyrie, the vast fortress you can see in the distance. A simple flight, a short flight that should be no challenge at all, were it not for the murderous crosswinds, of course. And the fact that at this point, the 13-year-old boy that has been put through God Emperor only knows how many hours of sore-level torture traps, bleeding, torn, destroyed, probably suffering from severe blood loss, etc., will now need to navigate these treacherous mountain passes to glide towards the Eyrie. Should he, through some utter miracle, survive this as well without being splattered against the mountainside, or simply have his glider torn apart by a nasty crosswind, he will be guided towards a landing pad, where the librarian will be waiting for him. And just as the guy thinks, oh, wow, I lived! Holy shit! That's quite some achievement. The librarian will grab him and toss him out into the void, or leave him to starve to death or freeze to death on the ledge, because, you see, the final test is a psychic probe from the librarian, where he needs to know that the aspirant has truly given up on life, which, after surviving all of that, you would think that the poor bastard would be granted a seconds of satisfaction to be like, I lived. But if he does, then death will truly be inevitable. I mean, there are some nasty chapters out there that have some downright unfair and ridiculous selection processes, don't get me wrong, but this one, fuck me. If the survival rate is even measured in the 0.0 something percentage, I would be stunned. And recruited from the primitive populace of a planet as well, with a total population maybe scraping 1 billion, if you're lucky. Not to mention, out of that pool of potential aspirants every year, you are looking for the most suicidally retarded to begin with. I'm sorry, but the Doom Eagles would have been wiped out within a millennia. Anyways, Presuming that the young aspirant actually managed to get through all of this, then he gets to actually be elevated to a Space Marine, which again has something like a 1 in 10 survival odds. Yeah. But hey, if they do make it, they get fancy silver armor and a jetpack, which is pretty sweet. And as an added bonus, because the entire chapter has given up all hopes of anything ever, they're basically immune to Nurgle as well, which is neat. In fact, this isn't even merely speculation, this is an observable reality. As during the 13th Great Temper Tantrum, the, rewritten one where Abaddon actually wins rather than yet another failure, the Doom Eagles were sent in to fight against Nurgle's plague zombies on multiple occasions, where entire planets had been swept clean by the zombie plague, turning every portion of the populace vulnerable to Grandfather Nurgle's pleas and whispered promises of relief from pain and suffering. Well, that's a very, very powerful promise for somebody who fears death, for somebody who fears pain, who fears the inevitable. But for the Doom Eagles, what exactly are you promising them? Hey there, nice big Astartes boy. Would you like to become a zombie? If you do, you can avoid death. Yeah. That's not really going to work on them, and it didn't, as not a single solitary member of the Doom Eagles fell to the zombie plague. Not a one. Not a single brother. That is Adeptus Sororitas levels of spiritual purity right there. Or, well, actually, I don't even think it's spiritual purity. I literally do believe that, see, Grandfather Nurgle's greatest weapon is not the plagues in and of themselves. Merely killing the enemy has no true purpose in Nurgle's eyes. It's a nice bonus if you're invading an Imperial world, don't get me wrong, but that is not the point of a plague. The point of Nurgle's ailments is not to destroy the body, that's a side effect, sure. It is to destroy the mind, to tear down the psyche, to reduce a man to a sniveling, begging wreck who will take any escape from the torment and pain, even if it leads to greater damnation. Nurgle is first and foremost a god of mental, psychological rot, before he is one of physical torment. And as the Astartes are already immune to disease, the only way into their minds is through that promise. Against the Doom Eagles, though, and their weaponized autism of being absolutely certain that death has already claimed them, Nurgle just doesn't have anything to tempt them with. He doesn't have any arguments to convince them to lay down their weapons and become shuffling corpses. And this is not the only insult they've delivered towards the Lord of Death, either. In fact, their apothecaries are rather interesting, because whilst most chapters' apothecarians are dedicated solely to the health of their battle brothers, which, again, due to the whole immunity against disease thing, largely means patching up wounds or recovering the gene seed of lost battle brothers, the apothecarians of the Doom Eagles actually involve themselves in the study of diseases and the attempt to cure plagues that are broken out on Imperial worlds, as they view this as just a gooder usage of their time and resources as waging war against the physical foes of the Imperium. And considering, again, Nurgle's chosen weapon, it is a good usage of their time, one that no doubt pisses off the Grandfather quite some bit. But, of course, the part of their battle doctrine that the Doom Eagles are by far the most famous for is, as we mentioned a while ago, their jump pack assaults. The Doom Eagles, who are living on a world of countless sheer cliffs and massive mountain tops stretching out above a shattered and no doubt extraordinarily lethal surface, will from a very early age have gotten used to flying with the aforementioned gliders. Jump packs, therefore, leaping through the sky holds no fear for them, and they will no doubt have learned how to maneuver in the air from a very early age, as this is simply just a means of transportation for them. Their favour of the jump pack goes well beyond that of pretty much any other assault-focused chapter either, who still prefer to have specialised formation of assaulters, whereas the Doom Eagles view the jump pack not merely as a way to deliver their battle brothers into the thick of combat, but again as a simple means of manoeuvring. They will equip even allegedly Devastators and many other members of their formations with jump packs, or presumably some form of jump pack attachment, one would guess, as normally, obviously, the jump pack takes the place of the normally affixed power pack of the Astartes. And in the case of things like Devastators, many of those already also have prefixed power packs necessary for the operations of their weapons. There's even, I don't remember where I read this, so take it with a pinch of salt, but I recall a mention of the Doom Eagles moving Terminators into position via jump packs. Now, that is going to require some engineering right there, and definitely a very, very homemade variant of the jump pack to be able to do so. But it makes sense. Again, the key difference between the Doom Eagles and most other assault-oriented chapters are that they view the jump packs as not merely a delivery device, but one for simple traversal of the terrain, which makes an enormous amount of sense if you are going to have a much smaller but far more elite and effective force. Then maneuvering that force effectively really should be at the top of your list of priorities. Beyond the quirk with the assault packs, however, the overall chapter's organizational structure is largely coherent with that of the Codex Astartes, as you would expect of an ultramarine successor chapter, with one exception, that being the Council of Eagles. The Council of Eagles is an advisory body to the chapter master, who is given the title of Commander. The council is made up of every one of the captains commanding one of the chapter's companies, along with chaplains, apothecarians, forge masters, and librarians of rank within the chapter, or those who have demonstrated an ability to provide good, solid advice. They will then be summoned to advise the chapter master, the commander, on any matters of priority or import that he determines that he requires aid in untangling. The commander is not bound by the advice of the Council of Eagles, nor can they make a decision for him. They are purely an advisory body, but one that is of course possessed of a great deal of knowledge, veterancy, and a breadth of experience as well. Everything from the spiritual prowess of the chaplains to the medical acumen of the apothecarians, or the industrial know-how of the forge masters and psychic expertise of the librarians. And whilst again the commander is not bound by their advice in any way, he would be enormously foolish to ignore it entirely, especially when selecting where the chapter is going to be deployed next. Due to their infatuation with death and delivering defeats against it, the chapter will always attempt to deploy in areas of the greatest stress and turmoil, where the risk of death is the greatest and the damage to the Imperium is at its most severe, throwing themselves into the path of any and every disaster that befalls the Imperium, with a particular fondness for messing with chaos and Nurgle especially. Yet again leading to what I would imagine to be a rather heightened casualty rate which would be difficult to replace. Perhaps explaining why, in the more modern 40k lore, a lot of the Doom Eagles are now Primaris. Disgusting. There was even, I believe, what was it? I feel like I saw at some point a mention that the Doom Eagles had in essence been wiped out and were now an entirely Primaris chapter, like a fair few others, like one of my other favorites, the Scythes of the Emperor, who were defeated by the Tyranids, wiped out to the last man, except they weren't. They were a handful left that would now rebuild the chapter with Primaris Marines. Disgusting. Now, we'll simply just ignore that and presume that they are proper Space Marines, one and all, despite what can only be assumed to be a vanishingly small percentage of successful aspirants to neophytes to full Battle Brothers. But with that, I hope your knowledge of the Doom Eagles have been somewhat expanded. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for listening, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Until then, have a very good day.